Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, David Aragona. The DRF race of the day for Friday, July the 7th, is a very competitive edition of the Grade 3 Manila at Belmont Park. It's carded as race number 9. We're going 1 mile on the Widener turf. This race is for 3-year-olds. Let's take a peek at this field. Please click or scan the QR code for Race of the Day access on your mobile devices, which include free Formulator Pass performances. David, the 5 major dude, your 9 to 5 morning line favorite, and why not? A consistently competitive campaigner for trainer Todd Pletcher, favored in 3 of his last 4 races and coming off a graded stakes win.
Yeah, he's a really nice horse, and this is a pretty strong field overall for a grade 3 event. Belmont carded these 2 graded stakes for the 3-year-old males on Friday and Saturday, and the ones that don't want to go 10 furlongs in the Belmont Derby, they have this nice option to go the mile, and there's just a lot of depth in this 3-year-old turf division right now, and you see that with the 3 horses that I have pegged at short prices on the morning line, all talented runners.
And all of those horses have tactical speed. It'll be interesting to see where they're placed on our Timeform US pace projector. And I do agree that the 8, Dreaming of Kona, who's a little bit of an outsider on this surface at this distance, is likely to show some stretch out speed. But the 3 main contenders, they're likely to be in good position just off that long shot leader.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see who takes that first run at Dreaming of Kona, who does look a little tough to make on paper trying turf for the first time in this race. But the number 2, Talk of the Nation, is a horse that can be a little headstrong at times, so I could see him potentially getting aggressive. But all 3 of those have quite a bit of versatility.
If this pace does heat up, you might want to keep an eye on the number 3, More Than Looks. You'll note the LP flag over the number 3, Chicklet, which indicates he has the fastest late pace rating according to Timeform US. Let's kick things off with a number 1, Armstrong, a horse that's taken strides forward since being stretched out in distance and moved to the synthetic surface at Gulfstream Park. Here's his most recent effort. It's the Not Surprising Stakes, going 1 mile and a 16th on the Tapeta, and he wins this race comfortably with a respectable Buyer's speed figure. David, there are some handicappers that believe the synthetic form is more translatable to turf than regular dirt form. Are you of that opinion, or do you think that's sort of a dangerous assumption to make?
We do see that pattern with some horses, but I don't think it's a direct translation. Synthetic is a third different surface, and some horses are specialists over synthetic and not as proficient on turf and dirt. There is usually a bit more of a correlation between synthetic and turf, so we'll see if Armstrong can transfer that strong recent synthetic form to the grass. There's a little bit of pedigree here. Taproot is not the worst turf influence so far in a small sample, and the Dam was really all turf in her running. So there is some evidence that this horse can run and could like the surface, but this is a pretty tall order.
Yeah, big step up in class. Javier Castellano takes the mount on Armstrong, who has improved in his last 2 races. The 2 is Talk of the Nation, going out for trainer Shug McGahee, a stakes winner at Tampa Bay 2 starts back. They missed a little bit of time after that race. Came off the layoff here at Monmouth in the Jersey Derby. You mentioned that he's headstrong, and he kind of pulled himself into a box going into the first turn. But all in all, I thought he settled into a nice trip. Now, he did make the first run into the teeth of a fast pace, but isn't this kind of a bad loss at 1 to 5 to Bapio, despite giving him some weight?
I definitely thought that when I first watched this race. I mean, anytime you lose at 1 to 5, it's a pretty big disappointment. But remember, this horse was entered and then scratched at the gate of the American Turf on Derby Day at Churchill Downs. So obviously had a minor issue, and they got him back to the races off that layoff, as you said, in the Jersey Derby. And maybe he just needed a little bit of fitness from that race, a tightener. And that was a pace that really did come apart. And Bapio probably got the better trip that day, making the last run after Talk of the Nation. Within the context of the race, I actually thought he ran fine. It came up a surprisingly fast speed figure. So based on that, he fits.
A horse that might fall through the cracks from a wagering standpoint is the number 3, More Than Looks, who's coming into this race off of a solid late running score and a high level first level allowance race at Ellis Park. I didn't think there was a lot of pace in that race, David, and this horse did some good things rallying late.
Yeah, I've liked this horse's last 3 races in a row. He had a big trip in his debut, going 5 furlongs at Gulfstream, and then made this huge late run to break his maiden on synthetic. Had a crazy trip too back at Keeneland when he got rank early, went 5 wide around the far turn to just miss to Turf King, who saved all the ground in that race. And then, as you said, last time he put in that big late run once again. Was not a fast pace. He was moving fastest of all at the end. I know he's a little slower on speed figures, but I really like the late kick that this horse possesses. And if he's in range at the top of the stretch, he could be running late.
The graded stakes winner Nagarok added blinkers for his most recent start. It got him back to the winner's circle. This is the James W. Murphy at Pimlico. I didn't love the field he was in against, and he got a great ride from Flavien Prat. Breaking from the far outside post, Prat was able to make the inside on the backstretch and save some ground, and this horse is just much the best. Now he's going to have to do it without Lasix, but he's tactical. He has credentials, and he has the speed figures as well.
Yeah, he's really never run a bad race, and his speed figures have been progressing in the right direction pretty consistently since he made his debut. Like you, I didn't love the field that he beat last time, and he got such a perfect trip doing so, saving ground under Flavien Prat, coming through and just better than those horses. I didn't love his two prior races, or at least the Transylvania, when he couldn't beat Mo Stash, who was easily handled by Talk of the Nation in that Columbia earlier in the year. So we'll see what we get from Nagrok. Definitely a contender, but kind of preferred the other two short prices.
There's also a rock hard turf course that day at Pimlico, yielding extremely fast times the entire weekend. We've had a lot of rain in the New York area. It'll be interesting to see if he translates the form from that very firm turf course at Pimlico to Belmont. Here's Major Dude's win in the Grade 2 Penn Mile, and it was as expected. He was 2-5 in this race, and Irad Ortiz gave this horse, I thought, a pretty good trip. Now, Irad had an opportunity entering the second turn to take advantage of the rail position that he was able to secure. He decided to take back, came to the outside, gave some ground to the leader, and then still ran him down. He's just a consistently honest horse, and the question is, how low do you want to take on the tote?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought he got a pretty good trip last time. It sounded like maybe the announcer sold it like he had a little more trouble than he actually did in that race, taking back a little bit. But all things considered, he saved ground, got out when it really mattered, and was able to mow that field down. He just runs well every single time. If you're able to draw a line through his Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf from last year, he always shows up. He's been beaten by some good horses when he stepped up against tougher company before. The mile distance looks like it's no problem for him. I don't think he's going to be that big of a price in this race, but he's obviously one of the ones to beat.
Belluni, the number 6, I think was up against it last time out in the Grade 2 Pennine Ridge. He was a big price that day. He was last early in a race that was won on the front end with a horse that just set glacial fractions. I don't know what happened with Belluni. I would have liked to have seen him done sun running, however. It makes me question whether he's good enough to handle this group.
Yeah, I didn't love the trip last time to take him so far back in a race that looked like it had no pace in it, and he got a little rank, but they peeled him out at the top of the stretch like he was going to make a run, and it's just like he hit a wall in the final 3/16 of a mile and went backwards. And in retrospect, that Woodhaven that he won was a pretty weak field. The two horses that he beat, one's probably a sprinter, the other maybe more of a dirt horse. So I think it remains to be seen if he's just good enough to compete against this field.
Trainer Chad Brown's showing some confidence in entering the 7 activist investing in this race off of the lengthy layoff. I'm sure they're going to write plenty of first-level allowances on turf at Saratoga for Chad. Here's activist investing's last start as a 2-year-old. It's a maiden special during the Belmont at the Big A meet, and he was able to run this field down. And the horse that he beat, I think, is a useful horse for Barclay Tagg. He's hit the board in his next 5 starts with 1 win. Good performance for activist investing. Curious to see what we get off the layoff against this graded group.
Yeah, I liked the way that this horse progressed last year. He had a bit of a trip in his debut when I think the connections expected him to do a lot better than he did that day, but he ran better in his second start. They put the blinkers on last time, and he was much more professional, finishing off that race like we saw. As you said, wasn't a bad field, and a 75 buyer as a 2-year-old with routine maturity, the 8 months that he's been off. I mean, he could definitely take a step forward here.
And completing the field is our expected pace setter on the Timeform US pace projector. That's the number 8, Dreaming of Kona, who's also going to be making his turf debut. I just don't see a ton of turf in this family, David, and I like him at shorter distances. I like that they cut him back on the synthetic last time at Presque Isle and the Tom Ridge. He ran just fine that day, and I realized they placed him first in the 1-turn mile in the Mucho Macho Man. I'm not sure I love that race, and I didn't think he was staying on that well to finish anyway.
Yeah, I just haven't really seen the speed figure progression from this horse since he made his debut. He's kind of still running those numbers in the mid 70s in terms of buyers. And like you said, there's just not a ton of turf pedigree here to suggest that he would move up on this surface. And he really would need to compete against this field.
Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos, including David and Craig Milkowski's excellent Timeform US podcasts twice a week. Top pick time for the grade 3 Manila. I chalked out with Major Dude in here. He's just a consistent horse. I think he'll probably get a good trip. But I like where you're going, looking for a little bit of value on the 3 More Than Looks, who hasn't run a bad one, and you know he's going to be charging in the stretch.
Yeah, I just thought he'd be the right price in this race. I really like the way he's been finishing off his races, and I like that he was not so far back in his last start, because I don't think he's going to beat the 3 favorites if he drops out the back door in the early stages like he sometimes has, but saw some progression last time, and he's going to be the right price, moving in the right direction for Cherie DeVaux.
Johnny Velasquez takes them out on David's top pick, More Than Looks. He goes 3-2-5-4. I'll take Major Dude in the grade 3 Manila. It's your DRF race of the day for Friday. Good luck.